Vaishnavis? Ka. Who else? Shradadita can endeavor. Anyatama, anyone besides yourself. Tava, your. Prabhu, O Lord. Rasam, in the water. Kataya, while lying in. Bhuva, of the earth. Udvibahanam, deliverance. Na, never. Vismaya, wonderful. Aso, such an act. Tvai, unto you. Vishva, universal. Vishmaye, full of wonders. Ya, one who. Mayaya, by potencies. Idam, this. Sastrije, created. Ati Vismayam, surpassing all wonders. So there's two words in this verse that give a clear understanding of the I guess the general thrust of the verse, and that's the word anyatama, which means anyone besides yourself. So essentially what the sages and Brahma are saying, no one but you could do this. And then ati vishmayam, surpassing all wonders. That what he does, whatever the Lord does, surpasses all wonders. So Prabhupada will talk about this in the purport. Translation. Who else but you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, could deliver the earth from within the water? It is not very wonderful for you. However, because you acted most wonderfully in the creation of the universe, by your energy you have created this wonderful cosmic manifestation. Responsively, please. Who else but you? The Supreme Personality of Godhead could deliver the earth from within the water. It is not very wonderful for you. However, because you acted most wonderfully in the creation of the universe, by your energy, you have created this wonderful cosmic manifestation. So, Srila Prabhupada's purport. When a scientist discovers something impressive to the ignorant mass of people, the common man, without inquiry, accepts such a discovery as wonderful. Isn't that the case? You just look at advertising, for instance, right? Someone puts out a new phone and it's plastered all over the buses, there's billboards, there's this. How wonderful is this new phone? I remember years ago when they first brought out the iPhone, there was articles in the newspapers about how wonderful this, you can do this with it, you can do that with it, because before all you could do with the phone was make a phone call. That's all you could do. And even I remember when mobile phones first came out, does anyone remember the first mobile phones? It had this massive battery on it. It was like a brick and you had to carry it around, and not many people had them because they were really expensive. And now little things you can put in your pocket, and they became smaller and smaller and smaller, and now they're going bigger and bigger and bigger. Big screens and stuff. But every time they come out, it's such a wonderful thing. Or someone brings out a new computer or a new plane or a new this or a new that. And it's all being glorified by so many personalities, how wonderful this is. So the Prabhupada's addressing this here in the purport. When a scientist discovers something impressive to the ignorant man or the ignorant mass of people, the common man, without inquiry, accepts such a discovery as wonderful. But the intelligent man is not struck with wonder by such a discovery. He gives all credit to the person who created the wonderful brain of the scientist. A common man is also struck with wonder by the wonderful actions of material nature, and he gives all credit to the cosmic manifestation. The learned Krishna-conscious person, however, knows well that behind the cosmic manifestation is the brain of Krishna, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9.10. Maya jakshena prakrite suyate sa characharam. Since Krishna can direct the wonderful cosmic manifestation, it is not at all wonderful for him to assume the gigantic form of a boar, and thus deliver the earth from the mire of the water. A devotee is therefore not astonished to see the wonderful boar, because he knows that the Lord is able to act far more wonderfully by his potencies, which are inconceivable to the brain of even the most erudite scholars or erudite scientists. So here we see this wonderful pastime. And if we recall at the beginning of this chapter, Lord Brahma was instructing Manu because Manu had just got married to his wife and then received the blessings of Lord Brahma. And he was asking, he was a very submissive son, and therefore he was asking his father, what should I do next? So Brahma was very satisfied with his inquiry. And approved of his submissive attitude or behavior towards him, and said, this is actually a proper son. And then he instructed him, what you need to do now is follow the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and populate the universe, or populate the planet. And then Manu, he then addressed Brahma, and he said, well, actually the universe is, the earth is down in the bottom of the ocean, the bottom of the Garbhodak ocean. So can you make some arrangement to get it out? Because Manu obviously knew he couldn't do it. And then Brahma looked at this situation and thought, he's thinking it was quite difficult. So then while he was meditating on what to do, this tiny little ball came out of his nostril, about this big. It says the tip of the end of the portion of the thumb. And then instantly he grew into a gigantic form. And then we see that Brahma was amazed. What is this? What is this? What is this form that I'm seeing? Who is this? And just he was quite surprised by how quickly this form grew, so huge. It's just like a gigantic elephant. And then the Lord roared loudly, and he started to think, okay, this is not ordinary creation. And then he roared again, and it's described how, because Manu was there, and Brahma was there, and all the great sages were there. And it's describing how when the Lord roared the second time, he he instilled kind of he enthused his devotees there. They were enthused, and they actually could understand that this was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then they start to glorify the Lord. Now they've understood who it is, this uncommon creature. Then they glorify the Lord. And what we'll see happen in the next few chapters, actually, this pastime takes, I think, about 7 chapters here, goes up to chapter 19. And we'll see the uncommon activities of the Lord. And it's very interesting to be discussing this today, because it is actually Varaha Dwadasi today, the day we celebrate the appearance of Lord Varaha. And we see how these pastimes of the Lord are very, very uncommon. And if we look at in the prayers of Queen Kunti, she talks about how, what's the verse? Maya Javanikat Chanam. She talks about how you're like an actor on the stage. You're deluded by your curtain of Maya. And Bhishma Dev, when he's lying on his deathbed of arrows and he's offering prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, when he's just about to leave his body, he makes the same point: is that no one can understand you. Your pastimes and your appearance are very uncommon. So even we see here how the Lord is appearing in what to many seems like a fantastic form. The devotees here are saying, but actually for you it's not fantastic. You can do anything. And we see that sometimes, when you, I remember years ago, we were on traveling Sankirtan, and we're reading the story of the Lord fighting with Dvidvida the gorilla. And so this fight went on for many, many days. I can't remember, 80 or 90 days or something like that. This fight went on. And I remember one of the devotees, it was a younger devotee, who was listening to it, and he said, "Who wrote that story?" You know, it's like he couldn't believe it. It was just so fantastic he couldn't believe it. But this is, as Prabhupada's pointing out here in his purport, this is the perception of an ignorant person, because someone who understands the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even though they may be marveled by what Krishna does, or what the Supreme Lord does, they realize that, as this verse is pointing out, for Krishna nothing is impossible. He can do anything. That's the nature of being the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we see with Krishna's childhood pastimes in Braj, for instance, when he was a baby, still wasn't even crawling, that his mother was carrying him around, Yasoda Maya was carrying him around, and he started to feel very heavy to her. So she put him down underneath the cart, because there was a bit of a festival going on, and so Mother Yasoda wanted to get into the festival. Also the child was feeling heavy, so she put him under the cart. The sakat, the word for the cart in Sanskrit. And then he was lying there under this cart, but actually this cart was a demon in disguise called Sakat Asura. And Krishna realized that. He understood that this was Sakat Asura. So he kicked his legs and he kicked the cart with his tiny little feet and completely smashed the cart. Could you imagine like a baby like this big smashing a car? In the newspapers, everyone thinks, how wonderful, how did this happen? But for devotees, they understand that Krishna can do anything. Yeah? There's so many wonderful pastimes in Braj, like when he killed the Trinavata demon. He was just, there's the whirlwind was happening in Vrindavan, and Krishna was on the ground, and the Trinavata demon came and picked Krishna up and carried him up into the sky. Huge big demon in the shape of a whirlwind. And then Krishna, with his tiny little hands, just grabbed him by the throat and throttled the life out of him. And he was like way up in the sky, just fell down on the ground, and Krishna was on top, just playing on top of this demon. And it said that the demon fell so hard that it cracked the rocks. So nothing is impossible for Krishna. There's nothing Krishna can't do. And the devotees are not amazed by this, because they can understand Krishna is unlimited, his powers are unlimited. Therefore, he can do anything. And we see that in the seventh, I think it's the seventh canto of the Bhagavatam, towards the end of the pastimes of Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj is describing he's actually offering prayers, glorifying the Lord. And then he mentions there that Krishna appears in all species of life. Now, for us, this may sound a little bit fantastic. I mean, an ant form of Krishna, like a tiny little insect form of Krishna, a germ form of Krishna. But and Prahlad Maharaj says that this is not wonderful for you. So we see that in every species of life, Krishna manifests himself for the purpose, as we see in the Gita, it says, Paritranaya saranam vinaschaya chaduskritam dharma sangstapadataya sambhavama yuge yuge. To deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, Krishna appears. And so there's pious and miscreants in every species of life. And so in order to give them the opportunity of becoming God conscious and going back to Godhead, Krishna appears, because this is one of his main purposes. Of course there are other purposes there, but one of his main purposes when he descends is to re-establish religious principles. Like we have the Yuga Dharma, there's the Yuga Dharma, that there's four incarnations associated with each yuga, called the Yuga Avatars. So the purpose of these Yuga Avatars, when they descend, is to establish religious principles, establish whatever it is, the best process to follow in this age. And it describes in the Bhagavatam in the 12th canto, it says, Kriti yadhyayato vishnam chaitiyam yajato vikhay dvapare paracharyayam kalatad harikirtanat. That in the Krita means the golden. In the Krita Yuga, Krita Jayato Vishnu. You meditate upon Vishnu. This is the process. So I can't remember which form of the Lord, but there's a form of the Lord that comes to teach meditation, and by his example he shows how to meditate. And this is Tretiyam Yajato Makaya. He performs yagya in Treta Yuga. Well, that's the process for that age, is to perform yagya, sacrifice. Then Dvapare Paricharyayam, is deity worship. You perform deity worship in Dvapara Yuga, and then in Kalotad Harikirtanat. That in this age, the process is to perform Sankirtan. And we see how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he himself, he came, Krishna directly came to show us this process for the age, this chanting of Hare Krishna. And actually this chanting of Hare Krishna, this is the supreme process. There is no process that is more effective than this. It works in any age. It's not just Kali Yuga that Kirtan is effective. And we see the message of the Bhagavatam. If you look at the message of the Bhagavatam, the entire Bhagavatam is just pointing out one message, that this hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord is the most effective way of achieving God realization. Because we find that anyone hears the pastimes of the Lord, anyone engages in chanting the pastimes of the Lord, they achieve perfection. They achieve ultimately they achieve liberation. And at the end of this pastime, it describes how that if you read this part, or if you hear or chant this pastime, then Krishna becomes pleased. And if Krishna becomes pleased, what is difficult for you to achieve? There's a nice letter that Prabhupada wrote to the Pujaris one time, and he explains there that with all, if a devotee dresses the Lord with all his heart and soul, and he just talks about different elements of deity worship, offers him flour, offers him something to eat, then Krishna smiles. And then Prabhupada explains that if Krishna smiles upon you just once, your life is perfect. That's all you need. It's just like, young children, they're playing and they're doing something, they're not sure if they're doing the right thing, and their parents smile. And they know everything's okay. They become happy. So it's the same for us. If Krishna smiles upon us just once, then everything's okay. Everything's perfect. And that's the devotee's ambition, is just to have Krishna smile, just to make Krishna happy. So we see with all our heart, with all our efforts, our endeavor, we strive to please Krishna. It's just like, devotees, they're cooking for Krishna. We have Prabhu is offering arti to Krishna. So with all his endeavor, he's trying to do it in a way that's pleasing to Krishna, trying to make sure everything is very clean, trying to make sure, offering best quality incense, the lamps, etc., that everything is very good quality, with the idea of trying to please Krishna. We have children, we raise children, we guide our children. Why do we do that? We try to do that with the idea of pleasing Krishna, so that the children will come out to be nice devotees of Krishna. This is pleasing to Krishna. And then Krishna smiles upon us. So there's another nice verse, I think it's in the 9th chapter of the Gita, where Krishna says, Yad karoshi, yarasnasi, yachidohosi, dadashi, yatapashyasi kunteya, tat kurushamarapanam. And then he says, what's the next one? A little louder. Can't quite hear. No, what's the next verse? No, I think this is 26 or something. The next verse is Patram pushvam param toyam yomi bhakti prachiti taraham bhakti ashami prayatakmanha. Then the next verse is Subha Subha Farere Moksha Sekambanda Sanyasya Yoga Vimukto Mo Paishasi. That so what he's explaining is that whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, give away, you do that as son of Kunti is offering to me. And then he says, if one offers me with love and devotion, a leaf of flower, fruit, I think I might have the wrong way around. I think Patram Pusham comes first. And then he's saying, if you offer it with me with love, I will accept it. And then in the third verse he says, in this way you worship me in this principle of renunciation. All your auspicious and inauspicious activities will become purified, and you'll become fixed in me. I can't remember the exact translation, but essentially he's saying that anything auspicious or inauspicious becomes purified by this service, and then you'll be delivered and you'll come to me. So this is the message of the Gita, and this is the message of the Bhagavatam, is that simply by doing our activities with this mood, this favorable mood, and this is the point that's also pointed out by Rupa Goswami in the Paribhasa Sutra of the Nectar of Devotion, the Bhakti Sindhu, is there's this Anukulyena Krishna Anushilana Bhakti Uttama. This is considered to be this verse from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It has two elements to it. It has what they call the Sarup Lakshana and the Tatastha Lakshana. So Sarup means like the primary, and the Tatastha means the secondary Lakshana. So the primary qualifications of that is it's an activity which is done for the pleasure of Krishna. So three things there. It's activity for Krishna, and it's done with a favorable intention or for the pleasure of Krishna. So this is actually what is called bhakti, bhakti ruttama, this pure devotional service, because we're doing it for the pleasure of Krishna. So even though we may not be on the level of the Goswamis or on the level of these great Vaishnavas, or here we see with Manu and Narada and Brahma, even though we may not be on that level, if we're doing an activity for the satisfaction of Krishna, then this is perfect. We may not be great devotees. We don't need to be great devotees, but if you do it, just like there's a nice story. Srila Prabhupada, he was sitting in his room, and then Saraswati, Malati's daughter, bought him a flower. And she was doing that to please Prabhupada. She just wanted to please Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was so touched. He said, "Oh, you have bought this for me?" And then later on, he was talking about the process of bhakti. He always used to, encourage Saraswati, and he was saying how, with a simple act of bringing something simple like a flower. I think there was a story. The story goes like some life member or some big person bought a big check, and Prabhupada just put it on the desk and didn't take any notice of it, because Prabhupada's perception was that this man was doing it to try to impress Prabhupada, whereas Saraswati, her offering was simply to try and please Prabhupada. So we see, the motive with which one does service to Krishna is more important than the act itself. Someone may come with a wonderful offering, like millions of dollars or something like that, and give to the deity, or make a big show of it, trying to impress everyone how much money they're giving. But this is not as effective in purifying the heart and in pleasing Krishna as someone who simply offers a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water with love and devotion. The motive is so important. So if we approach Krishna with a proper motive, if our motive is to please Krishna, then this is pleasing to Krishna. If our motive is to satisfy the Lord by whatever we do, and that's the verse, Yad karoshi yarasnasi yajdosya, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, give away, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. And that way you'll become liberated and freed from the reactions to auspicious and inauspicious works. So this is the essence of bhakti, is cultivating the proper consciousness, cultivating the mood. It doesn't matter if you're a small devotee or a great devotee or whatever. It doesn't matter. If one has the proper mood, then Krishna will accept. But if we don't have the proper mood, then Krishna won't accept. So Prabhupada points out, it's just the offerings themselves are secondary. The main thing is the bhakti. So if and bhakti simply means to do it with love. It's not some big fancy, complicated thing to understand. And that's the beauty of the process of devotional service, is even a child can do it. Anyone can do it. It's not like you have to have great qualification. Whereas you look at, these previous ages, that you had to have great qualification, to sit down and meditate on the Lord for thousands of years. Can you imagine doing that? Just sitting down for even a year, even a few days, just to sit down and meditate upon the Lord. Very, very difficult. Or to perform these very, very costly yagas. Well, you see the yagas we do in this day and age, and they're kind of a bit funny. We make the fire arena out of bricks or whatever like that, I've seen sometimes here they wrap the bricks up in alfoil. It's very, very, in one sense, very insignificant. If you look previously when they did, there's a story in the Bhagavatam that when Yudhisthira Maharaj wanted to perform what was the name of the yajna he did? Huh? The Rajasuya yajna. So then he sent Arjuna out to find wealth. And so Krishna told Arjuna there was this mountain peak. The whole mountain peak was gold. Imagine that, a whole mountain peak of gold. And apparently this was the gold that was left over from a yajna that a king had performed many, many thousands of years in the past. So everything they used in the yajna was made of gold. Like these days we're using, wooden spoons and brick fire kilns, and maybe we've got brass or copper plates, hopefully not aluminium. It's all relatively affordable. But previously everything was made of gold. The plates were made of gold, the yajna kun was made, and they weren't just little like sometimes you see those little copper yajna kuns like this big, They weren't just little things, they were like huge. And they're made of solid gold. All the spoons are made of solid gold. All the vessels that held the ghee and the grains and things like that were all made of solid gold. And what did they do at the end of it? They just left it. These days, you get a bit of gold, you want to hang on to it, you want to hide it so no one steals it. And a very, very different consciousness then, very, very different situation. So no one can afford to do yajnas like that. It's hugely expensive. And then Dvapare Paricharyayam, deity worship. We see in this day and age with the deity worship, if you look at all the jewelry the deities are being offered, mostly it's made of plastic. But previously all the jewelry was made of very, very expensive, precious jewels and semi-precious stones. Even like, I remember the first time I was looking at outfits, with all this fancy jari work. What the devotees used to do is they used to get these Benares saris because they're very, very elaborate. But if you look at the older Benares saris, the jari, like jari is like they have a wire filament and then they wrap wire around the outside of it and they just bend this in all different shapes and sew it on. Previously this was made of gold. Now it's all just, some imitation aluminium that's sort of sprayed with some color or something like that. But previously it was all gold. So we're seeing, even in the deity worship, all the jewelry was authentic. The paraphernalia was all made of gold or silver or some precious metal. But now it's all just plastic and imitations. It's not, But nonetheless, because of the bhakti, so we do these yajnas because the devotees are doing the yajna to please the Vaishnavas or to please Krishna. Because even when you chant yajnas, if you've seen the yajnas they do in Mayapur, there's a mantra they're chanting, Idam Krishna, Idam Namama. This is for Krishna, this is not for me. Whereas we see previously, people would be doing yajnas because they wanted to get some fruitive result. So then when you're doing a yajna, when you'll have that fruitive result, then you have to follow all the rules and regulations very strictly. But when we do, in this day and age, understanding our faulty position, when we do different yajnas and different things, then at the end we pray to the Lord that angahinam kriyahinam vidhinam jaya bhavarastuta savana Krishna kasha prasadata yad kinchit vaiganam datan tatta shapashamana Sri Krishna smaranam karomi. The things that I offer, the leaf, the flower, the fruit, whatever I've done, there may be so many imperfections. The mantras, I might not have chanted them correctly. I mean, who can chant mantras correctly in this day and age? It's like, even like, there's a story one time when Srila Prabhupada was giving Gayatri, or not giving Gayatri, but later, Jayananda Prabhu wasn't sure if he was chanting Gayatri properly. So he came to Prabhupada and he said, Swamiji, I don't know if I'm chanting Gayatri properly, can you please, correct me? And then so Jayananda, Prabhupada said, chant into my ear, so Jayananda chanted the Gayatri into Prabhupada's ear. Prabhupada started to laugh. He said, don't worry, you'll never get it. He just encouraged him, just keep chanting, but don't worry about getting the mantras correct. And even Prabhupada told Jananivas that he could chant the mantras in English if it was too difficult to chant the Sanskrit. So we see that even with all these types of things in this day and age, we can't do it correctly. So we simply do it for Krishna's pleasure. and then Krishna accepts it. Krishna is happy to accept it because of the motive. But if we're doing it for some fruitive gain, then it has to be done so perfectly. So we don't waste our time with things like that, doing yajnas for material gain, or coming and offering things to the deity and saying, give me this, give me that. Because there's so many rules and regulations. It happens, it works. If that's your intention, is to get some material reward from the Lord, it'll work if you do it properly. But there's so many rules and regulations, and if you don't follow them properly, there's reactions. Whereas if we just do bhakti for the pleasure of Krishna, the more we're able to do it for the pleasure of Krishna, then the more we become freed from reaction, the more we become freed from the reactions to doing something improperly. So the whole purpose of bhakti is just to ultimately get to the point of understanding Krishna. And in this day and age, the only way we can really do it is through the chanting of the holy names, and just through doing it for Krishna's pleasure. Whatever it is you do, just do it to please Krishna. And in this way, you will achieve the goal. Okay, I wasn't really prepared for this. This wasn't the verse I was expecting, but anyhow. Any questions or comments at all? Yes, Vilasmanaji. Yeah. I don't know, I've forgotten.
Okay, it was related to the offer that you can just achieve the smile of Krishna.
Yeah, there's a letter where Prabhupada mentions that. And actually in the new deity worship book we're working on, that's the front quote, the main quote. Because to me it's such a powerful thing. That, because Prabhupada's, if you look at Prabhupada's instructions, because one of the interesting things with deity worship, for instance, is that mostly you find devotees are into the ritual and doing the rituals right and things like that. But if you look at Prabhupada's instructions for deity worship, he doesn't really talk about rituals very much at all. A little bit, but not much. The main thing he talks about is to do things in a way that's pleasing to Krishna. So he talks about the quality of ingredients, for instance. He said everything must be first class. The incense must be first class, the food offerings must be first class, the dress must be first class. And then he says, and you must be first class. Yeah? So, he focuses on that, on the bhakti aspect of it. It's just like, if I invite you to my house and I want to please you, I invite you for a meal or something, I find out what you like to eat. And I try my best to cook everything the way you like it. And that way you become pleased. But if I just invite you to my house and I'm not interested in what you like to eat, and I burn it, or I oversalt it, or I do all these kinds of things, and it's just, I'm doing it because I have to, then are you going to become pleased? Like sometimes in some parts of the world we find that, to be, especially in places where devotees live in the communities and stuff like that, on an ISKCON property, it's a managerial necessity, it would seem, to have to do it. But they make a rule that, to live on the property you have to perform so many services. But then the problem with that is the motivation changes. Rather than serving because you want to please Krishna, you're serving because you have to. So then what happens is devotees tend to, not always, if devotees are more advanced, then obviously not, but for younger devotees, they tend to do things very much remote, on sort of autopilot, and they're not really trying to please Krishna, or they do it begrudgingly, or reluctantly. So that the point is whatever you do it as an offering to Krishna. When we're offering something to Krishna, the idea is we're trying to please Krishna. So it's really important to, even if your capacity is small, and this is an important point to remember also, is we all have different capacity. Some people's capacity is very great, and they can do so many things. Just like you look at someone like Srila Prabhupada, devotees were marveled by how much Srila Prabhupada would achieve. So obviously he had a great capacity to serve Krishna, but others have lesser capacity. But if they're doing, there's a nice story in the Ramayana that illustrates this point. And I'm sure you all know the story of Hanuman. He was throwing mountains and rocks and all kinds of stuff in, the whole mountains he'd be throwing into the ocean when they were going to Lanka, to cross the ocean when they were building the bridge. And there was a spider there. Some devotees say squirrel, but the story I know is spider, who was throwing grains of sand into the water. And Hanuman was looking at that and thinking that, what is this? How's this going to help Ram? It's so useless what you're doing. And you're going to get squashed because you're in my way. And so he was kind of like basically, telling the spider to go somewhere else. But Ram corrected him and said actually, I see his service and your service as equal, because you're serving me with all your heart and he's serving me with all his heart. That's the essence of it, is what's in here, not what's in here. So, and of course, if you're a rich man and you come to the temple and you put 20 cents in the hundi, what's Krishna going to think? Where's the rest? Yeah. And Prabhupada mentioned that one time. It's like he was talking about these men who would go to Vrindavan to retire, and they'd leave all their wealth with their family. And Prabhupada would say that the Krishna, okay, he sees you coming there, but he also sees what you've left behind. He wants that also, because he wants everything. And basically he wants you. He wants you to surrender with everything. And so, there's just some reflections on how we can surrender to Krishna and what Krishna sees, what's pleasing to Krishna. At least my understandings of it. Yeah. We're progressing on it. Yeah, that's what I can say. We're definitely progressing. We just finished yesterday. Going through, because the first book is getting its final edit right now, final proofread. It's already had the indexing done. So once the indexing is done, it's kind of pretty well final. We're just making sure all the wording, there's no mistakes and stuff like that. Dot the I's, cross the T's, all that sort of stuff. And we just finished the second chapter of the second book yesterday. We just worked through the last sidebar comments, because before there was a lot of footnotes, and it's like lots of footnotes indicates a very poorly written text. So we're putting as much of it in the body of the text as we can, and putting stuff in the sidebar so that it's easier to read. And so we finished the last sidebar yesterday on the procedures for putting the deities to bed. Then today we start on Radha Krishna worship, because what we're doing is we're going to have 4 chapters in the bathing and dressing section. So there'll be a chapter for 4 chapters, 3 chapters. There'll be a simplified standard of worship. So in the simplified standard of worship, we'll have Gauritai, Jagannath Subhadra, and Radha Krishna. Then we'll have general standard of worship. In that chapter, we're going to have Gauritai, Jagannath Subhadra, Radha Krishna, Shalagram. Then we'll have an elaborate standard of worship, which will be Radha Krishna and Shalagram. So we're going to do the Radha Krishna chapter first, because that covers all the standards of worship. Because previously they just had 3 standards, well actually 2 standards were there. 3, there was simple worship, and then the general standard worship, which was Radha Krishna, which is a little bit complicated for most devotees, I thought. And then in the second volume there was Shalagram worship. But if you were doing a simplified worship according to time, you had to bring all the other mantras in and figure it all out yourself. But and the book's going to be spiral bound, what they call Canadian half bound, so you can just lie it flat on a tray or something and just flick through the book and use that book on the altar. You don't have to produce your own product. And so that's what we're starting today. Is we're going to start working on the Radha Krishna standard, and then we'll divide that into the different sections. So that's where we are with it. And then there's the appendixes, which will have all the additional mantras and mudras and stuff like that to work on. I think this section will go more quickly, just because we've been using these procedures for a few years now, so we kind of got all the bugs ironed out. It's just a matter of dividing it into the chapters, and then in September I want to revisit the arti, because I'm not exactly 100% clear on how to present it, because there's different concepts in ISKCON on how to offer arti. So to try to, there's two ways we could do it. One way we could try and explain it so devotees can understand it. The other way we could just put a really simple, vague kind of thing like has been in the past. If you look at most of the deity worship books in ISKCON in the past, it's been real vague about how you offer arti. Even the first one, the Archana Padati, it was just like offer arti basically. You offer incense lamp. It tells you what you offer, how many circles, but not any sequence. And so devotees are quite confused about how to do it. So to try and present it in a way that is, the approach we're taking is to try and present it in a way that devotees can understand how to do it. But it's challenging. Yeah. So going to try revisit that in September, I think. Anything else? Any other comments on that? Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi.